Family isn't perfect, and anyone who's lived long enough knows that truth doesn't need proof. If perfection were required, none of us would still be standing together. We come into families with different hearts, different wounds, different ways of seeing the world, and somehow we expect everything to fit neatly. But life doesn't work that way, and love certainly doesn't either. Perfection is a myth we tell ourselves when we're tired of being disappointed. We imagine that if people truly cared, they would always say the right thing, act the right way, and never let us down. But real people don't live in fairy tales. Real people get overwhelmed. Real people carry pain they don't always know how to explain. Real people make mistakes, even with the ones they love the most. Family was never meant to be perfect. Family was meant to be a place where love is chosen again and again, even when things get messy. Love is not a feeling that floats effortlessly through a room. Love is a decision. Some days it's an easy one, and some days it feels like the heaviest thing you'll carry. Love is waking up and deciding not to give up just because things didn't go your way. Love is staying present even when emotions are loud and patience feels thin. You see, it's easy to love people when they meet your expectations. It's easy when everyone agrees, when voices are calm, and when life is smooth. But that kind of love doesn't teach us much. The kind of love that shapes us is the love that shows up when expectations fall apart. The love that stays when understanding is incomplete. The love that says, I don't have all the answers, but I'm still here. Families don't fall apart because they're imperfect. They fall apart when people stop choosing love and start choosing distance, silence, and pride instead. They fall apart when being right becomes more important than being kind. When winning an argument feels more valuable than protecting a bond that took years to build. Let me tell you something life has taught me gently and then all at once. Love doesn't mean pretending everything is fine. It means caring enough to face what isn't. It means having the courage to say, this hurts, without turning hurt into a weapon. It means recognizing that someone can love you deeply and still fail you sometimes, not because love is absent, but because humans are flawed. We live in a world that celebrates walking away. At the first sign of difficulty, we're told to cut ties, shut doors, and move on. And sometimes, yes, boundaries are necessary. Sometimes distance protects peace. But too often, we mistake discomfort for danger and effort for failure. Staying doesn't mean tolerating harm. Staying means refusing to let imperfection convince you that love is meaningless. Staying means understanding that relationships grow the same way people do, through effort, patience, and time. Families are made of ordinary people trying their best with the tools they have. Some were never taught how to communicate. Some were raised in silence. Some learned love through struggle instead of softness. And yet, despite all of that, they show up in the only ways they know how. Love is choosing to see effort even when execution is clumsy. Love is recognizing intention even when words fall short. Love is remembering that no one arrives fully healed, fully wise, or fully prepared. Perfection asks nothing of us. Love asks everything. Love asks us to pause before reacting. It asks us to listen when we'd rather speak. It asks us to forgive when holding onto anger feels safer, and forgiveness doesn't erase memory. It simply refuses to let memory control the future. There will be moments when love feels unfair. Moments when you give more than you receive. Moments when you wonder if it's worth it. And in those moments, remember this, love is not measured by ease, it's measured by commitment. Families are worth fighting for not because they are flawless, but because they are foundational. These are the people who witnessed your beginnings. They saw you before the world shaped you. They hold pieces of your story that no one else ever will. And one day, when time has softened the sharp edges and quieted the noise, it won't be perfection that brings comfort. It will be the knowledge that you chose love even when it was hard, that you didn't walk away at the first crack, that you understood love was never about getting it right all the time, but about refusing to give up too soon. So let go of the fantasy of a perfect family. It doesn't exist, and thank goodness it doesn't, because if it did, there would be no room for grace, no room for growth, and no room for real love. Choose love not because it's easy, but because it matters. Families argue. That's not a secret, and it's certainly not a failure. If anything, it's proof that people care enough to speak instead of disappear. Silence is far more dangerous than raised voices, because silence convinces us that nothing can be fixed. Arguments, on the other hand, mean something still matters. Conflict does not cancel connection, no matter how loudly it tries to convince us otherwise. I've seen families panic at the first sign of disagreement, as if one hard conversation is enough to erase years of shared meals, inside jokes, late night worries, and quiet support. But relationships don't dissolve that easily. Roots don't pull out of the ground just because the wind blows hard. Disagreements happen because people see the world differently. Each person carries their own experiences, disappointments, and expectations into the same room. What feels small to one heart can feel enormous to another. What feels like honesty to one can feel like rejection to someone else. That doesn't mean love is gone. It means understanding hasn't caught up yet. We make a mistake when we treat conflict like a verdict instead of a conversation. An argument is not a declaration of hate. It's often a cry for recognition, a way of saying, please see me, please hear me, please understand what I haven't known how to explain. But too often, instead of listening, we start building walls. We defend ourselves so fiercely that we forget we're defending a relationship, not a courtroom case. Connection doesn't disappear just because words collide. Families share something deeper than agreement. They share history, they share memory, they share the invisible thread of belonging that doesn't snap just because it's stretched. You may walk away angry, disappointed, or hurt, but that thread still exists, quietly holding space for healing. The problem isn't that families fight. The problem is when we assume fighting means failing. Some of the strongest bonds I've witnessed were forged through difficult conversations. Conversations where voices trembled, tears fell, and truths finally came out of hiding. Those moments were uncomfortable, yes, but they were also honest. And honesty, when handled with care, strengthens connection instead of destroying it. Conflict only becomes dangerous when respect leaves the room. You can disagree without devaluing. You can express pain without attacking character. You can stand your ground without turning your back. These are skills we aren't always taught, especially if we grew up watching conflict handled through silence or anger. But just because we weren't taught doesn't mean we can't learn. Connection survives conflict when people choose curiosity over accusation. Instead of asking, why are you like this, try asking, what happened to make you feel this way? Instead of preparing your response while the other person speaks, try listening for what's underneath the words. Often beneath anger sits fear, beneath defensiveness sits hurt, beneath harshness sits longing. Families don't break because of truth. They break because truth is delivered without compassion. And let me be clear, compassion doesn't mean agreeing with everything. It means recognizing the humanity in front of you. It means remembering that this person is more than the moment you're struggling through, more than the argument, more than the mistake. When conflict shows up, it's tempting to rewrite the entire story, to tell ourselves it's always been this way, or nothing will ever change. But emotions have a way of exaggerating reality. They pull the lens too close, making the present pain feel bigger than the years of connection that came before it. Take a step back, breathe, remember, connection is built over time and it isn't erased in a single moment. Some families avoid conflict at all costs, believing peace means silence, but unspoken feelings don't disappear, they settle. They harden, they turn into resentment that eventually speaks louder than any argument ever could. Healthy conflict, on the other hand, clears the air. It gives pain a voice and love a chance to respond. There is strength in staying present during discomfort. Staying present means not walking away mid-conversation just to protect pride. It means allowing space for emotions without letting them take control. It means saying, "I need time," instead of saying things you can't take back. Presence is patience in action. And sometimes connection survives not because everything is resolved, but because people choose not to sever the bond while resolution is still finding its way. You don't have to solve everything today. You don't have to reach perfect understanding. You just have to keep the door open. Families are not fragile glass structures that shatter at the first crack. They are living things like trees. They bend, they sway, they lose leaves in difficult seasons, but as long as the roots are cared for, growth continues. Conflict reminds us where the roots need strengthening. So don't let an argument convince you that connection is lost. Don't let one hard moment define an entire relationship. Speak with honesty, listen with humility, and remember that disagreement does not erase love. It tests how deeply we are willing to protect it. Connection is not the absence of conflict. Connection is the decision to stay engaged when conflict arrives. Walking away is easy. People don't like hearing that, but it's the truth. Leaving in anger, shutting down emotionally, or deciding you're done can happen in a single moment. It takes very little effort to turn your back when your feelings are bruised and your patience is worn thin. What takes real courage is staying when everything in you wants to quit. Staying is not weakness. Staying is one of the bravest choices a person can make. We live in a time where endurance is misunderstood. We are told that strength means never looking back, never bending, never giving someone another chance. But life has taught me something different. Strength is not found in how fast you leave. It's found in how thoughtfully you decide whether to stay. Anyone can walk away when love feels heavy. Anyone can disappear when conversations get uncomfortable. Anyone can choose distance when effort is required. But courage shows up in the quiet moments when you ask yourself, is this worth trying for one more time? And families are often worth that question. Staying doesn't mean ignoring pain. It doesn't mean pretending things didn't hurt or convincing yourself that everything is fine when it isn't. Staying means you care enough to face discomfort instead of escaping it. It means you believe healing is possible, even if it's slow and uneven. Courage is sitting at a table where your feelings might not be fully understood yet and speaking anyway. Courage is listening when the truth is hard to hear. Courage is resisting the urge to protect yourself by building walls so high that nothing good can get through. Walking away gives immediate relief. Staying asks for patience. Relief is tempting because it feels like peace. But relief is often temporary. What we avoid has a way of following us, showing up in new relationships and familiar patterns. When we leave without reflection, we carry unfinished lessons with us. Staying, when done with wisdom and boundaries, gives something deeper than relief. It gives growth. Families challenge us because they see us fully. There's nowhere to hide. They remember our flaws, our history, and our past mistakes. And that exposure can feel threatening, but it's also where the deepest growth happens. The people who know us best are often the ones who push us hardest to become better, even when it doesn't feel gentle. Courage is not loud. It doesn't announce itself. Courage is quiet and steady. It looks like showing up for another conversation. It looks like choosing calm over sarcasm. It looks like pausing before reacting, even when emotions are demanding an instant response. It's easy to mistake avoidance for self-respect, but sometimes avoidance is just fear dressed up as independence. Real self-respect allows room for effort. It asks, "Have I truly tried?" before deciding to let go. It honors boundaries without closing the door to understanding. It knows the difference between protecting your peace and protecting your pride. Staying doesn't mean staying stuck. It means staying engaged. There will be moments when staying feels lonely. Moments when you feel like the only one trying. Moments when you wonder if your effort matters at all. And in those moments, courage whispers instead of shouts. It reminds you that meaningful things are rarely easy and easy things are rarely meaningful. Families aren't built by convenience, they're built by commitment. Commitment doesn't mean perfection. It means persistence. It means returning to the table even after storms have passed through. It means believing that people are capable of growth, including yourself. Walking away often feels empowering in the moment. It gives the illusion of control, but courage is trusting that you can handle discomfort without losing yourself. Courage is knowing your worth while still offering grace. And let me say this clearly, staying is a choice, not an obligation. Courage also includes knowing when to step back to protect your well-being. But too many people leave before courage ever has a chance to speak. They leave at the first sign of difficulty instead of asking what this moment might be trying to teach them. Growth doesn't come from easy exits. It comes from honest effort. When you stay, you learn patience. You learn communication. You learn how to hold space for emotions without letting them rule you. You learn resilience, not the kind that hardens your heart, but the kind that strengthens it. Staying teaches you how to love with intention instead of impulse. Years from now, when emotions have settled and life has moved forward, it won't be the moments you walked away that bring peace. It will be the moments you showed courage, the times you tried again, the conversations you didn't avoid. The love you chose even when it required effort. Healing doesn't begin with blame. It never has, and it never will. Blame may feel powerful for a moment, but it doesn't build anything lasting. It points outward, searching for fault, keeping our hands clean while our hearts stay heavy. Healing, on the other hand, asks us to look inward, and that takes courage most people don't talk about. It's easier to say, "This is your fault," than to ask, "What part do I play in this?" But families don't heal by keeping score. They heal when someone is brave enough to take responsibility, even if others aren't ready yet. Responsibility is not about taking all the blame. It's about owning your part. Every family disagreement carries more than one truth. There are feelings that were hurt, words that landed wrong, and moments where intentions didn't match impact. When we focus only on what others did wrong, we stay stuck. When we ask what we can do better, we start moving forward. Healing begins the moment we stop waiting for someone else to change first. There is a quiet strength in saying, I could have handled that better. Not because you were entirely wrong, but because growth matters more than pride. Pride builds walls. Responsibility builds bridges. Families struggle when accountability feels like weakness, but accountability is one of the strongest acts of love. It says, this relationship matters enough for me to examine myself. It says, I value connection more than being right. Blame keeps us safe from discomfort. Responsibility asks us to sit with it. Sitting with discomfort means acknowledging that good intentions don't always lead to good outcomes. It means recognizing that pain caused unintentionally is still pain. It means understanding that impact matters as much as intent. And let me tell you something life has taught me. Healing doesn't require perfection. It requires honesty. Honesty with yourself first. Before families can heal together, individuals must heal within. That means asking hard questions. Why did that reaction feel so intense? Why did that comment hurt so deeply? Why do certain patterns keep repeating? These questions aren't meant to accuse, they're meant to reveal. Responsibility invites self-awareness, and self-awareness is the doorway to change. Too often, people confuse responsibility with surrender. They think owning their part means losing their voice, but true responsibility strengthens your voice because it's grounded in clarity instead of defensiveness. When you stop defending every action, you make room for understanding. When you stop justifying every reaction, you open the door to growth. Healing families aren't made of people who never mess up. They're made of people who are willing to repair. Repair is a skill. It looks like acknowledging hurt without excuses. It sounds like listening without interrupting. It feels like choosing calm over control. Repair doesn't demand agreement. It asks for respect. Blame keeps wounds open. Responsibility helps them close. There's a temptation to wait for apologies before softening, to hold tight to hurt until someone says the exact right words. But healing rarely arrives on a perfect schedule. Sometimes it begins when one person chooses to lower their guard first, not because the other side deserves it, but because peace does. Taking responsibility doesn't mean accepting mistreatment. It means refusing to let resentment decide your future. It means understanding that unresolved anger weighs heavier than accountability ever will. Families grow when responsibility replaces retaliation. Retaliation says, you hurt me, so I'll hurt you back. Responsibility says, this pain matters too much to turn into a weapon. One keeps the cycle alive. The other begins to break it. And breaking cycles is some of the hardest work a person can do. Many families carry unspoken patterns passed down quietly through generations' silence instead of communication, anger instead of vulnerability, blame instead of accountability. Healing asks us to notice those patterns and decide whether we want to continue them. Responsibility is the moment you choose differently. You may not be able to control how others respond. You may not receive the apology you hoped for, but you can control how you show up. You can choose integrity over impulse. You can choose reflection over reaction, and often that choice shifts the entire dynamic. Healing is rarely loud. It happens in small moments, pausing before speaking, admitting a mistake, listening a little longer, softening a little sooner. These moments add up. They rebuild trust brick by brick. Families don't heal because everyone suddenly agrees. They heal because someone decides to act with wisdom instead of waiting for perfection. So if you're waiting for healing to begin, Start where you stand. Ask yourself what you can own, what you can change, and what you can release. Responsibility doesn't erase the past, but it clears a path forward. Healing begins when blame ends. Family is where we begin, whether we realize it or not. Long before we understand the world, before we learn how to protect ourselves or explain our feelings, family shapes the way we see love, safety, and belonging. It's not always gentle, and it's not always fair, but it leaves its mark all the same. We don't choose our beginnings, but we are deeply influenced by them. Family is the first place we learn how to speak and how to listen. It's where we learn what love looks like when it's expressed well and when it isn't. It's where we learn how conflict is handled, how forgiveness is given or withheld, and how emotions are either welcomed or ignored. These early lessons follow us quietly into adulthood, shaping our relationships long after we think we've moved on. That's why family is worth the work, not because it's easy, but because it's foundational. When families struggle, it's tempting to dismiss their importance, to say, I don't need this, or I'll build something better elsewhere. And yes, chosen connections matter deeply. But even when we build new bonds, the roots of family still influence how we love, trust, and show up. You don't outgrow your beginnings, you grow through them. Family holds our earliest memories, some warm, some painful, some complicated. These memories form the background of our emotional lives. And when we choose to work on family relationships, we're not just fixing the present, we're healing the past and protecting the future. The work of family is not glamorous. It's slow. It's repetitive. It asks for patience when progress feels invisible. It requires showing up even when appreciation isn't immediate. But the work matters because it strengthens the foundation everything else is built on. Strong families don't happen by accident. They happen because people decide that connection is worth the effort. Family is where we first learn forgiveness, not because everyone deserves it, but because carrying bitterness costs too much. It's where we learn patience because growth doesn't happen overnight. It's where we learn empathy because living closely with others reveals how different hearts can be. And those lessons ripple outward. When you learn how to listen in family, you listen better everywhere. When you learn how to repair in family, you repair better everywhere. When you learn how to love imperfectly but intentionally, you bring that wisdom into every relationship that follows. The work you do in family shapes the way you move through the world. Some people avoid this work because it brings old pain to the surface. And that's understandable. Healing can feel like reopening wounds, but wounds that are never clean don't heal, they linger. Family work invites us to tend to what was neglected, to bring care to places that learn to survive instead of thrive. Family is worth the work because it teaches us who we are. Through family, we discover our strengths and our sensitivities. We learn where we are resilient and where we are still tender. We learn which patterns we want to keep and which ones we must change. This self-knowledge is priceless. The effort you put into family isn't wasted energy. It's an investment in emotional maturity, wisdom, and peace. And let me say, this gently family work doesn't always end in perfect closeness. Sometimes it ends in healthier distance. Sometimes it ends in clearer boundaries. But even then, the work still matters because it brings clarity instead of confusion and intention instead of avoidance. Choosing to work on family means choosing growth over comfort. Comfort avoids hard conversations. Growth leans into them. Comfort says this is too much. Growth says this is meaningful. and meaning is what gives life depth. Family is worth fighting for because it is the place where cycles can be broken, where silence can turn into dialogue, where misunderstanding can turn into awareness. When one person chooses growth, it shifts what's possible for everyone connected. You may not see the impact immediately, but seeds planted in honesty and effort do grow. Years from now, the value of this work becomes clearer. You realize that the patience you learned made you kinder. The forgiveness you practiced made you lighter. The boundaries you built made you stronger. And all of it started with choosing to engage rather than withdraw. Family is not perfect. It never was, but it is powerful. It shapes us, teaches us, and challenges us in ways nothing else can. And that is exactly why it's worth fighting for, not with anger, but with intention, not with force, but with love, not with expectations of perfection, but with commitment to growth. So if the work feels heavy today, remember this. You are building something that lasts, something that reaches backward into your beginnings and forward into your future. That's Auntie Mae's life lesson today, Yellow Heart.